know your healing power, to hear your word, and to be nourished by the body and blood of your Son.
I think our start date was the same date as the Battle of Chickamauga during the Civil War. So we've seen the Civil War. We've seen, first flight. We've seen the automobile. We've seen telephones and all of those things that have occurred. What was once a small town has really become a small city. So we've seen remarkable changes here.
This church stretches back longer than my oldest ancestor that I knew can remember.
This church was built about 1861, we believe. We don't really know for sure. But we know that it had a $100 debt, and so it could not be consecrated until the $100 debt was paid. So this church was consecrated September the 19th, 1863.
For St. James Church, the year 2013 was an achievement 150 years in the making. This sesquicentennial year became a time to look back in appreciation and to rededicate the parish to its mission. As a new church in the new town of Hendersonville, North Carolina, St. James grew from a mission planted in the 1840s by St. John in the Wilderness, Flat Rock. Early on, and for decades to come, Thomas Atkinson nurtured St. James. As Bishop of North Carolina, he made yearly visits, often rallying the congregation in difficult times. A mountain diocese was many years away, so it was Bishop Atkinson who consecrated St. James Church. That service took place September 19, 1863, not long after St. James called its first rector, Nicholas Collin Hughes, who today looks down on his flock from this church window. The morning of the service, the Battle of Chickamauga broke out in Georgia, embroiling soldiers from Henderson County. Only 8 parishioners could be present for the consecration service, showing courageous faith in a time of trial. And the Civil War would take a lasting toll. Soon, and for a long time to come, St. James could not afford its own priest. For many years, the church struggled, at times all but dormant. Yet it emerged, regaining vitality in the 1890s. By the early 1900s, the church property and ministry had grown. The rector's duties included traveling around the county to several Episcopal missions and schools. In time, his buggy was replaced by a horseless carriage, rugged enough for rough mountain roads. Of course, there were disappointments. The stone walls for an expanded sanctuary, begun in 1916, would stand unfinished for many years. Some called it the ruin. But instead of despairing, the parish built benches and a rustic altar. The ruin became a chapel, open to the sky. Today its walls embrace the resurrection window and the pipes of a splendid English organ. By 1963, the church's centennial year, big changes were coming soon. The old wooden landmark, covered with ivy, gave way, and in its place, a new Gothic structure, built of stone with striking stained glass windows and inviting landscaping, and later a colonnade, connecting the church with its parish hall, named for architect Earl Stillwell, a parishioner whose designs defined the church. For calling people to worship, celebrating special occasions, and ringing peals, new bells, cast in England, went up in a tower tall enough to send out their proclamation. Over the years, the church's mission has also grown. The St. James Carpenters Club, for example, is just one of many outreach ministries. Teams from St. James work with the local Housing Assistance Corporation. Volunteers help people who are unable to make home repairs and rehabilitation. Outreach ministry has led St. James members to several foreign countries. Chris McConaughey, a surgeon, and his wife Jenny, a nurse, chose to become full-time medical missionaries. The McConaugheys and their 5 children moved from Hendersonville to one of the poorest parts of South Africa. They were supported by St. James and others through the African Medical Mission organization, and they were joined over time by hundreds of volunteers visiting from many nations. Chris provided medical care and training in South Africa until his death in 2007. Jenny continues to serve there as an Episcopal missionary. One of the newest ministries takes St. James to Honduras. Each year, a parish team spends a week at Our Little Roses, a home for girls, many who were abused and abandoned. The team brings clothing, toys, and love to the girls, who have found a safe home at Our Little Roses. As sponsors, St. James volunteers stay in contact with the girls. They strive to return each year, and the reunions are heartfelt. Episcopal churches from many states support Our Little Roses. The St. James volunteers end their week with a special service. Returning home, they will gather support from the parish and plan for next year's trip to Honduras. At the sesquicentennial service in 2013, Bishop Taylor rededicated St. James Church. He honored the tiny band of founders who boldly declared their ministry in the midst of a civil war. He said, "When the world says this is a scary time, we Christians dare to proclaim the good news."
This is your tradition. This is your DNA. This is what you have been doing for 150 years, and now is the time for you to follow your ancestors.
People who came before us sacrificed to make a community there, but they were engaged in the community as well. And so I think of all the prayers and all the tears and all the things that have been taken place in that building that have flown out to that would go out into the community. They were blazing a trail.
One of the things when I was pondering what St. James means to the community, to me it means refreshment, re-energizing, reconnecting, and rebuilding. We come here for refreshment, for spiritual refreshment. We come here to get energized for the week that's coming. We reconnect with each other because can you do Christianity alone? I suppose so, but it doesn't have the depth that it does when you connect with a community.
We retain that older style of worship. We're very modern in the way we think.
The mission that we have here aspect. The thrift shop, of course, is trying to raise money, but more importantly, to do mission and ministry to the people that come in and buy things, and ministry with one another.
It started in 1968 by a group of women, and they wanted to raise some money to provide some toiletries for some members of the church who were in nursing homes. And the church said, we don't have money. So as I understand it, they just had a sale out of the back of their car and raised almost $20, thought it was a huge success. So it grew from there.
There's a very definitely a family feeling involved here, which it's very hard to put your finger on, except instantly you come in here, you feel it.
And we give between $50,000 and $60,000 a year to outreach ministries in this community.
The thrift shop is working at that aspect. The medical loan closet is much the same way. They are giving a very tangible service to people who need some form of medical product.
It was begun, the exact date is kind of hard to determine for sure. Let's just say back in the mid-60s, it was begun, and you might make the connection here. The church bought a couple of wheelchairs and maybe a pair of crutches or so for their parish members here that needed them, and they put them in a closet. So that's where the name and the term medical loan closet came from.
We help all kinds of people that want to come in and borrow something like a wheelchair or if crutches to a hospital bed, to walkers, canes.
Oftentimes people come in and they are really distraught because something's happened in their family.
The men and women who work in the medical loan closet minister to one another, and they're ministering to people who are at a place where sometimes they're afraid.
People are in tears sometimes, and we kind of just help calm them down and let them know, okay, here, you can use this equipment. They'll say, what do I owe you? How much does it cost? And we'll say, it's a loan. You can have it for at least 3 months. And they're very relieved.
They're hurting and they're in pain, and they can minister to them there. I'm proud of our day school because At any given time, we'll have from 40 to 60% of our kids being assisted with Department of Social Services funds. So we're meeting a real need in the community to educate 1 to 4-year-olds that might not get that education anywhere else. That's sort of the mission and ministry aspect of it, of hands-on with people. Even outside of the mission and ministry that we believe we're called to do as Christians, we have a really huge economic impact on the community as well.
We help a lot of people behind the scenes. Certainly we refer people to Interfaith Assistance Ministry and the Rescue Mission and such.
Well, the Hendersonville Rescue Mission is a outreach of local churches. It's a homeless shelter. It's started to provide men, women, and children a safe place to stay when they don't have a place to go, as well as programs to help them get out of homelessness. We're also a feeding program. Well, we start out actually using the kitchen at St. James 32 years ago because we didn't have any equipment here. And we haven't closed our meal program. We feed breakfast, lunch, and supper 7 days a week. We haven't closed in 32 years.
And we have people here who care so much for the community in what they do. They Feed the Kids program, the mission trips to Honduras or Jamaica. There's always something going on, getting cans of food together for the storehouse. So there's an ongoing theme that the parish does care about the community, and that's very inspiring.
We're really going to be working more and more as Christians and less as Episcopalians and Presbyterians and Methodists and you name it. That's really what excites me, is that we're going to be moving more and more outside of ourselves, and we've got a good hold on that already, and we can build on that. I think over the years St. James has played a role of being able to be a family.
St. James is a family, and actually that's what the church was always meant to be. The church was always meant to be a family of people, one in the body of Christ.
They can come here and they have a group that they belong to, whether it's the thrift shop or the medical loan closet, or they sing in the choir, or they go to a class, something that has meant a lot to them.
The choir is a committed group of people who find musical and spiritual expression and meaning in singing. In all the years I've done this, the St. James Choir is one of the most dedicated groups that I have worked with. And of course the organ accompanies hymns. This organ is a remarkable instrument. It is a world-class instrument. It is a Harrison and Harrison organ from Durham, England. And the remarkable thing about this organ is that it was entirely assembled in Durham, in England, as it is now, and then it was disassembled and shipped over here to North Carolina. It was unpacked in crates, and then it was reassembled in the configuration that we see today. And this was in 1999, after years and years of planning. So there are many different components which hopefully intertwine to create a really meaningful service of worship for the congregation.
It's home.
It really is.
You know, there's
What's the old saying, home is where the heart is, and a lot of our heart is right here in this place because, you know, it shaped you, but it also shaped me, and I learned a lot while I was here, and I'm grateful to God for that, and so we share that in common, certainly.
At seminary, when I went to become ordained, one of my professors was from England. He was my New Testament professor, and he said, "Oh, you Americans, you think a church is old when it's 50 years old, and you tear it down and you build a new one." He said, "But in England, you know, we really don't believe a church is broken in until it's at least several hundred years old." And what I would take that and extrapolate that to is to say, no, this building that we're in right now hasn't been here 150 years, but we've been here 150 years. There's some staying power. It's it's really a pat on the back to those people who have come before us, that they built something that is still here. And I've used it before that, you know, if these walls could talk about all those people who have come through here, because the old church sat on this site, and there have been the many saints of St. James who have built us up spiritually, that make it that we're here 150 years later. And I think that's something that we can be proud of, that we're a part of that heritage. We're not the totality of it, but we are certainly a part of that. And I'm proud of that.
Thank you.